What's up, friendly neighborhood nerds? Thank you for watching our video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell.
What's up, friendly neighborhood nerds? This is Judah Rad, and I'm here with Robo Strange and Respawn. And today we have a very, very special guest. Jesse Lonergan was born in California, raised in Saudi Arabia and Vermont, and then spent 2 years in Turkmenistan with the Peace Corps. His comics include Joe and Azat, All Star, and Hedra. When he gets real, this is from his image bio. When he gets really excited, he rubs his hands together like a cartoon villain.
Totally true. Or just like clench fists.
Right. So your Planet Paradise OGN will be released on the 11th of November, and Hedra just went into its second printing. Congratulations on the second printing, Jesse.
That's awesome.
How does it
feel? Good, I guess. I mean, it's sort of like it's kind of like a whole new world for me. Like I've been like in sort of the more alternative indie comics, and then going with Image and like the direct market, and just like a totally different process. But it's great that it sold out. So I'm happy.
Did you know that Hedra was going to be such a hit when you were writing it?
No, definitely not. I was right.
You're in the middle of the panels, like this is gonna blow their minds.
This is gold.
I feel like those kind of thoughts like will come into my head, but like very quickly will be like, I don't know if this is anything.
Right.
Like I'm like, is there actually an idea here that other people can see, or is this all just in my head?
Right.
So definitely while I was working on it, I was kind of unsure. But I have people who I generally like give to read my stuff, and they were pretty positive about it and felt like it was like unique and good. And sort of before the Image edition, I'd self-published like a newsprint edition, and like when I would have that at conventions, it would sell really well. Like people kind of respond. I feel like the look of Hedra. I wish I had planned this, but I didn't. But basically, it really, if you are not going to be into it, you will not pick it up. Like, like you will just look at it and be like, no. But if you're going to be into it, you probably will pick it up. And so it has like a good quality in that sense. So
I feel like that's like the challenge everyone is always going for is like, how do I do something unique? How do I do something that not everybody and their mother has already done? And I would say you definitely hit the nail on the head with that with Hedra. It's like and I'll be honest with you, I feel like I say this a lot to some people, but when I first look at it and I'm like, all right, what is this? Like, I need words, I need stuff. I have a slow brain, maybe, I don't know. But as I'm reading it, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And then it's a page turner, and then you want to see what's happening, and like, oh, my imagination works. So that's pretty awesome. So looking at Hedra and the little peaks that we've had with Planet Paradise, it seems like you have a love for space, the sci-fi and all that. Is that do you have like a main inspiration, a love for space and all that?
yeah, I mean, I like sort of like science fiction and outer space stuff. Growing up as a kid, Star Wars was my favorite movie. And it's one of those things where I've watched it so many times. And also just like reading sci-fi books as a kid. And I feel like maybe in my 20s, I was sort of like distancing myself from it and being like, I'm a serious person. Like I've just sort of like, this is what I like. It's what I enjoy. I like the imagery and the ideas of it. So yeah, it's been something I've enjoyed looking at and stuff kind of forever. So.
That's awesome. So with Hedra specifically, what's the subtext there? Like for lazy people like me, do you want to just like give us like a cheat sheet? Like, what are you trying to say? What does Hedra mean to you?
What does Hedra mean to me?
Yeah.
I feel like giving a cheat sheet is kind of cheating.
Right. No, that's correct. Yeah.
How
do you think I made it through high school? No, just
yeah. So I mean, it's kind of like telling like this kind of classic sort of story that I feel like is a story that for many people is very familiar. It's kind of like a hero's quest. You start off in the known world, you leave the known world, you go into a world of amorphous beings, you come back changed. But sort of like taking that kind of story and then really like taking the comics medium and like really trying to twist like the way it's told and like how information is organized and how you sort of understand it, so that it feels at once sort of like nostalgic but also sort of new at the same time.
Yes.
That was sort of the idea.
There's like Flash Gordon vibes, but then also like Gulliver's Travels vibes.
Yeah. There's a lot of vibes. I feel.
Right.
So now in the future, whenever anybody brings up that book, I'm gonna just repeat everything you said, and it'll be like I'm smart.
Yeah.
And... You guys didn't get that? No.
Well, I've had a long time of sitting and drawing and thinking about it.
Right.
To come up with these ideas. So
It's
not necessarily smart, it's just editing.
Right.
That's right. That's what we do as well.
Yeah.
Right.
So I was talking to the boys after we all read this, and I was like, I want to wallpaper my apartment in this comic for one, which would be so fun. But the other thing I was thinking is like, if I was a comics publisher and I got stuck in an elevator with you, Jesse, and you were like, hey, I'm going to pitch this wordless comic book. I'm like, the first word association I have is risky. Like, what did you have any concerns about whether it would translate? Like, what kind of things were bubbling to your mind with this kind of comic?
Well, I mean, I didn't pitch it to Image actually. Eric Stevenson got a copy of the newsprint edition I'd got, and then he asked me if I wanted to do like a mass market edition. I had submitted it to a few publishers, sort of more smaller indie ones, and they had not accepted it. And
Did you get any feedback?
Yeah, let's see, like great, but not for us.
Okay.
Interesting, not long enough. Some like it's like I think within like maybe like the comic book shop direct market, it's like an okay length. But if you're starting to deal with alternative publishers where they're more like bookstores, it is a little skinny. But I do think it's like a very hard thing to explain.
Yeah.
And it's like really like you just need to see it, and then it's like, oh, okay, I got it. Like and maybe you can't put the words to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's sort of like, I think because so much of it is being done with like the medium, it's hard to put into words because it's like, well, there's like all these different panels and there's like, pages that look like mazes and stuff, which a publisher might just be like, yeah, that sounds risky. But I really, and I think it for Image, I think it had to be a risk. Like,
yep.
like,
Which I applaud, by the way. I think not enough risks are taken in entertainment these days,
right.
So it's refreshing to see something that's different like that.
Something new.
Yeah. Really, like, I mean, grateful for Eric for taking a chance. Because it is just like, it's a really different book. Like when on New Comic Book Day, like, stores were showing pictures of like the new comics this week, and it's like it sticks out like a sore thumb. It's like this oversized, so much white on the cover.
Right.
Like sort of like I feel like the possibility of it being really bad and crashing and burning had to be real.
The weight.
Yeah.
That's so exciting. So when I was reading Hedra, I was hearing a soundtrack in my head, and I know, Judah, I think you were hearing the No Man's Sky soundtrack. I was listening to Rush 2112, and it was such a good time. But I want to know, Jesse, did you have like music that you were playing while you were creating it? Did you have a soundtrack in your head for that story?
Yeah, I didn't. I do. I often make up like sort of soundtracks for work, but I didn't really for Hedra. But I guess like for me, the music is like, I don't know, like kind of like instrumental,
like 2001 Space Odyssey kind of.
Maybe 2001, but like a lot of like Kraftwerk, like sort of like this like very computer sound, or like maybe some like Trent Reznor sort of soundtrack kind of.
Yeah,
kind of like, I don't know, all that like late 70s, early 80s synth stuff. seemed really cold like 15 years ago, but now all of a sudden it has this warm, welcoming sound about it.
Nostalgic,
So,
yeah.
yeah, it was all of a sudden nostalgia. It's like, no, it's not cold. It's
That's
beautiful.
it.
I love the living panels. That's the best way I can describe it. But like panels that are on their own, but also actually reaching out to each other to form
Right.
an even more distinct image from afar. It's like very layered.
Yeah.
It's definitely something I liked.
Yeah. It was sort
No,
of
go
like with like some of the pages, it's like the sort of one of the ideas was like, I want people like to be able to look at it as a page and be like, I got it. But then if you look at it closer, it's like, oh, there's other things going
That's
on
right.
as well, you know, so that it like, it's understandable from a distance, but also there's like a reward in looking a little closer.
Did you name stuff in this book? So like I don't know what I don't know what Hedra means. Is that the name of the main character? And if not, what is the name of the main character? What's the name of the other characters?
So there's, I didn't name any of the characters. There's the astronaut, there are the monsters, and there are the gods. And in my head, and those are sort of the names I had. Hedra comes from polyhedra, so like, you know, different shapes. Sort of like while I was working on it, I got kind of like obsessed with like the platonic solids. And this might be about to get really geeky.
Let's do it.
Platonic solids, basically they're like gaming dice, you know, so those shapes, all of them except for the 10-sided die. So like the 20-sided, that's like an icosahedron, and like tetrahedron and cubes and all that. And sort of like they were these solids, and they're I think they're kind of magical because like the way they work is they all have the same shape. So like a 20-sided die, it's all triangles. And every point where they meet, it's like the same number of triangles meet at that point. And so there are only 5 possible shapes that work this way. Like the 10-sided die doesn't work that way because at some points 5 meet and at other points 3 meets. I'm sorry for doing this. I apologize.
That is actually
I was
so
not
cool.
expecting to. I was not expecting to triple my geometry knowledge today.
That's right. If we all go quiet like that, it's us being like, "Whoa, that's my
Yeah.
like,
So like Plato, philosophically, he thought these were like the representative of the elements. And so like the cube he thought was like earth, like, and the 20-sided, that's like water because of the way it rolls and it's so smooth and stuff. And I think the 4-sided or tetrahedron, that would be fire, I think. And then 8-sided or octahedron is like air. And so like those elements. And so I wanted when it goes to the gods, those shapes are representative of the various gods in it. And sort of like that idea of sort of a symbolic meaning. And I was like, I like Hedra as a title, partially because I think people won't know what it means. Like it's a wordless comic, you know, and so I kind of feel like having a word as the title that everyone's going to understand would actually take away from it.
Right.
So like having this thing, people are going to be like, I don't know what that means. Like it just felt like a part
adds to the mystery.
Interesting.
I like that answer. I like that answer because what I was afraid of was that it was going to be like, did you even read the damn comic?
Yeah.
No. Like all of those ideas were like ideas that were going through my head while I was working on it, and there were like there's a lot of like scrap that was produced in the making of the comic, like just pages that I like or sections that I just cut because they didn't work, and there was more sort of about the shapes and what they meant. But ultimately, I felt like it wasn't necessary for someone to know all of this stuff about platonic solids and whatever to get the idea of like these are elemental beings.
It does that's a cool layer. I think we're going to start a band called the Platonic Solids after this interview.
Yeah.
You deaf people.
So when you're looking at the book, first thing that goes through my head, I buy a lot of books that sometimes I don't even read, but I got to make sure they're bagged and boarded and everything. So I appreciate you bringing out a book that I cannot bag and board. Why did you Why did you go with the large format?
Yeah. Well, it's actually smaller than the newsprint edition that I published on my own.
It works for the art. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess for me, like the art is sort of the more important thing. And I mean, if you want to, you can't put it in a long box, I guess. But
Nope.
you can get an 8x10 sleeve.
Sure.
That's like an art print size.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it can be bagged in some way.
Yeah. I could frame
but
it. I'll hang it on
sort
a
of-
wall or something.
Um,
Yeah.
But I found I guess part of my thinking was just because it is like a different comic, and so anything that can signal that to somebody that like, look, this isn't going to be like what other comics
Right.
in a comic book shop like I felt was helpful for it. So the fact it's a little bigger, it's it's a little awkward. I thought
It
Good.
called out to me at the store. Like I was not familiar with your work. I walked in, I saw just the shape and the cover, and I was like, yoink.
Yeah. Yeah. So it worked.
I feel like people have used the word silent a lot to describe it because it's wordless, and I'm like, but it's really loud. Like you see it from a distance.
It
and
That's
you're like,
right. Yeah.
Yep.
And
really-
it says buy me. So
It won't
Hey.
stay away.
That's it. Jesse, I want to know, like, what artists, what writers, what works inspire you?
I mean, lots.
Yeah.
I really love like comics, and I love like sort of all types of comics, and so like I feel like there's also different aspects. So, for example, like with like line work and detail, like Mobius is kind of like this of everybody, and like Jeff Darrow or Katsuhiro Otomo, like their sort of work I find very inspirational in terms of like line work. I also like in terms of like layouts and paneling and stuff. Like Chris Ware is like a big influence, but also like Jason Shiga. I also think is more of an indie guy. He does really like sort of cool like playing with like what is a book and how do things work. So those are like big ones in terms of like comics stuff. For non-comic stuff, I don't know. I like mythology. I sort of like kind of like the classics sort of story. There's something I find very uncluttered about those stories. Like they're like these very like simple but sort of primal conflicts that I feel that we're as a society we're pretty cleaned up.
Yeah.
I'm okay, you're okay. Nobody gets into fights. But like, I feel like that those old stories sort of get at something kind of like darker and bloodier about humans.
Yep.
When I say nobody gets into fights, I know people get into fights.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like, but like I've never been in a fight. There's this civility, I guess,
Right.
of sort of like
Yes.
There's no more duels in the streets for being slighted or showing up to your house with a
like-
sword.
Yeah.
saying,
Love slaps. Yeah.
You
Right.
stole my goat.
People aren't biting their thumbs at each other anymore. So.
right. Instead, they're just like blowing up at each other on Twitter.
That's right.
Right, right.
Like in separate houses.
How dare you?
I'm so furious.
Yeah.
Like,
So your previous work, like Joe and Azat, as well as All Star, they seem to draw heavily from your personal experience. So you basically lived all over the world. Must have been kind of challenging at times. How did any of that shape you as a storyteller?
well, I mean, I grew up in Saudi Arabia until I was like 5, So it's like pretty young.
Mm-hmm.
And then I grew up in Vermont for the rest of the time until like college, and very rural Vermont too. So I don't know what your guys' impression of Vermont is when I say it.
Bernie
but,
Sanders. That's it. That's all I
Bernie
know.
Sanders. Okay,
It's like
that's probably
Virginia.
the best impression you could have.
I don't think of trees. I don't think anything like Bernie Sanders. Is there? What else is there? I don't know.
So I've been there, and to me it was like Virginia without the people.
Yeah. Okay, that's another good one. Virginia, but cold.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so sort of like growing up in a very rural area, small area, kind of isolated. I feel like that led to a lot of time alone. Spending time in my room, a lot of daydreaming, and stuff like that, which I think probably has something to do with like my creative process. And I think also just sort of like when you travel anywhere, like it just sort of changes your perspective on things, and sort of like there's this sort of like this way of thinking that we take for granted, like of wherever you're from, everybody thinks sort of that way, and then you go to some other place and people are like, that's crazy. Why would you eat pork for breakfast? That's ridiculous. And you're like, what? No, pork is a breakfast food.
Yeah.
And then others go, no, we eat rice for breakfast. And
Yeah.
like, what?
Yeah.
Rice? That's ridiculous. Those are like very superficial things, but like
For sure. Yeah.
just like different ways of like thinking about things and stuff. And so I feel that maybe that's part of like my sort of like kind of stubborn attitude of like everybody's doing things this way, but that doesn't mean anything.
Right.
I can do it my own way.
That's right.
I wish more people thought like
Makes
that.
sense.
Yeah. That whole, because it's always been done that way, is one of the most idiotic answers, I feel.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. It's literally how I live my life, but I agree with you still. So.
I totally do that. Like I don't know how you guys handle the heat, but I can't stand the heat, and I'm always convinced that skirts are the way to go in hot weather.
Yeah.
Because they have to be warmer than shorts and pants.
Have to.
But I'm
It does sound better.
I'm not a person who's going to put on a skirt.
I want to get
comfort.
I want to get the nationality right. Is it Scottish? Yeah, it's got to be Scots. The Scots have it right. Yeah, kilts. There you go.
Right.
I'm going to be very offensive to them and say I can't. I always do the Irish Scottish thing. So
My family's coping mechanism with the heat is just to complain about it a lot. It's so humid out here. Like it's just kind of culturally a tradition.
I just am in the worst mood possible. And I'm from Vermont, so I'm not even talking. You guys know heat much more than I do, but I'm like, oh, it's terrible. It's awful.
Well, here in Hawaii, all you have to do is spend $600 a month on AC, and you're good. I don't see what the big problem is.
I mean, I feel air conditioning saved my marriage.
I bet.
There was a stretch where we were fighting every day, and it was just because I was hot.
do you know, I totally read that book.
I don't mean to laugh at that, but
Yeah. That's pretty much me and food. So that's why I don't think I'll ever get back into fighting weight again, because my journey to that is a very cranky, irritable me. So embrace body love.
There are those people who are like, oh, I forgot to eat lunch.
Oh,
and I'm
no.
like, that understand. That's awesome. I am like thinking about lunch from 10 a.m. on.
Yeah.
Like
I forgot I ate lunch already when I'm getting second lunch prepared. Yeah. What the hell?
The day is basically just measured in meals.
Yeah. Is it second lunch yet? All right. So getting back to writing, do you prefer writing prestige format one shots or like an original graphic novels to like month-to-month issue type stuff? Are you going to stay in that kind of realm?
I think I'm working on something that now I feel like could work as like a series to put together. I I don't know that my mind, that I have trained my mind to work month to month. I'm kind of in awe of comic book writers. You know, like the guys like Brian Michael Bendis or Scott Snyder, where they are doing, I don't know, 7, 8 books a month,
Sure.
and like
That's gotta be
hitting all
taxing.
those deadlines.
Yeah.
And I'm like, my writing process is very slow, and it's like, well, I think this will work. Let me have another think.
Especially when they write different titles, that just blows my mind. I'm just like, how do you stop thinking about this story? Go over here. Yeah.
Yeah.
They say to like make it in comics, you have to be 2 of these 3 things: fast, good, or nice. So it sounds like you're just good and nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a fast writer at all, but I guess I do think in terms of like a single story, so like a one shot or a graphic novel. And so this thing, I think, could be a series. I think of it as a graphic novel that I could break up into like 4 or 5 good chunks.
Sure.
That could work on their own.
What's this thing that you're talking around? No, I'm just kidding. You don't have to
it's sort of this project I just started, sort of called Prime, that I've been putting up pages on as I sort of complete them on Patreon. And it's like I was talking about, sort of like these mythic stories. It's kind of like this early beings and like a sort of a new world story, and you know, fights and conflict and stuff with like creation and gods and things like that. And it's more like stylistically sort of similar to Hedra than, say, Planet Paradise.
Cool.
And it feels like it can work in like 4 or 5 like 40-page
Like a mini-series. Okay, yeah.
Cool.
That's dope.
So you've got a sexy bookcase behind you that I'm dying to dive into, but I'll I'll ask you a question instead.
Okay.
What are your favorite sci-fi movies and TV shows and books and games? Like, what else do you nerd out on?
Okay. Movies. I just love movies. Like, you know, like they're. Like, I have a lot of opinions, but I will watch anything. And so I love bad movies. I love good movies. So like, definitely like Star Wars, as I said, is like one of like a foundational movie for me. Alien.
Yes.
Yeah, Alien. Like, and like Blade Runner, like the early Ridley Scott stuff. For TV shows, I used to be kind of against Star Trek, but I've kind of come around. I feel like I've learned how to watch Star Trek.
Interesting.
I don't know if you guys. Okay. Like,
It's worth it.
It was something I didn't like in the past, but I've kind of come around on.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm scared to go into detail after seeing that pillow about like, oh, this is what I.
Yeah. Please tell us more.
I can take it.
Well, it's just like I feel like there's people want to make like the Star Wars Star Trek dichotomy, and like, oh,
So
but
different.
like to me, Star Wars as like a film is far better than any Star Trek movie. It's like groundbreaking special.
Oh, there's that title.
Yeah. There it is.
It's like
Jesse
like
Lonergan
amazing.
hates Star Trek. Boom. Post. No, just kidding.
But what Star Trek has that I feel like Star Wars doesn't really have is like it's a lot of ideas, and you know, and like it presents a lot of points of view, and it presents sort of like interpretations of like our world and stuff like that. It might not look that great special effects wise, you know, and like the acting might be a little hammy.
It's more intellectual, though.
Yeah, but like
Crying
the
inside.
ideas are much sort of like bigger and more grounded at the same time.
Makes
and
sense.
sort of like, I felt like when I was like 16, I could only see how Riker would sit down on chairs, and it would just bother me. I'd be like, why is he sitting like that? Like, this is ridiculous. Like, what? That is not an acting decision.
This is his acting process. He goes in a couple hours and stares at the chair and we're like, I got something for this episode. This is how I'm going to do it.
Can we have a montage of various Riker?
I'm very tall. I'm going to sit down in chairs like this.
Yes.
I hope he doesn't do that in the rest of the world. But like,
He
sort
has a
of like,
condition.
sort of like seeing past that sort of surface stuff into like the bigger ideas. But that was something I had to sort of like come around to.
Yeah,
But like science fiction, like books, I like. Recently, I've been reading like William Gibson, so like Neuromancer and uh, Burning Chrome, the short story. So really like Philip K. Dick, and I really enjoy like the Foundation series, Isaac Asimov. I read those maybe like 5 years ago, and
Nice.
just like this idea of like a story that really doesn't have main characters, that it's like the world is the story. Really got into that. So those are things I like for sci-fi. TV shows, I don't know. There's Star Trek. I really liked Battlestar Galactica.
You don't have to pretend to like Star Trek. We're already past that. Just no. I'm just kidding.
No, I'm trying to think of like other sci-fi shows.
Yeah.
Rick and Morty.
The Expanse is really good.
Rick and Morty.
Rick and Morty. The Expanse. I haven't really gotten
any of it. Yeah. I just keep getting. It's one of those shows that keeps popping up. Everyone's like, "It's the best sci-fi ever."
It's a slow burn.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't tried it.
Yeah, so various shows like that. I kind of like. I think in terms of like creatively, like I don't know that's really sci-fi, and I'm blanking on the name. David Cronenberg, like Videodrome and like The Fly. It's like
Videodrome. Isn't that?
It's horror, but it's really weird.
Didn't he have like a gun, like biologically attached to him or something, or?
Oh, that's the one with Jude Law, and it's called like X something.
Yeah.
Like a video game, and the video game, it's like flesh-colored, like rubber.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
It's definitely a Cronenberg movie.
I know what I'm watching after this.
Yeah. It's not sci-fi, but I'll tell you. You said you watch anything movie. If you haven't seen The Nightingale, Reed told me about this yesterday. I watched it last night. I'm kind of like, when it comes to like when I find something new I like, I'm kind of like a vegan CrossFit evangelical where I just got to tell everyone. And so it's like, watch Nightingale. That's all I'll say about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a horror movie for anyone that it's got a really horrific scene in it. It was one of those ones that did the rounds on the headlines where people were getting sick when they were watching it at Sundance.
Oh, one of those. Nice.
Yeah, so I gave it a whirl.
Except every single time I hear that, like, people threw up in their seats. People died. Like, you'll never watch this movie. Right? And it's like, I watched it and I'm like, that was stupid. There is a scene here. I would call it more of a thriller kind of thing. Don't think like monsters or demons or anything, but the scene that everyone's talking about is kind of like, oh, and I'm like, I'm really affected by this right now. It's bad.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where like a week later you're still having PTSD.
Yeah.
I feel like I should warn people.
It's good. Check it
out. Sounds great.
Yeah, it's really good. So, Jesse, your website, complete 180 here.
Speaking of trauma.
Yeah, that's it. Speaking of trauma, you speak about how one of the first comics you read was Asterix and the Great Crossing, which is awesome and cute. But I want to know, so you talk a bit about like Calvin and Hobbes. What are some comic classics that you recommend every comic nerd reads?
Comic classes everyone should read. Well, I mean, the big ones like Watchmen and Dark Knight, I think you have to read those at some point.
It's like a base. Yep.
Yeah, I think like for me, like some of like my classics, I don't know about. I'm sorry, I'm not going to answer this in terms of like what everybody should read because I don't know what everybody should read.
Sure.
But for me, like the 1960s Spider-Man with Stan Lee writing and John Romita Sr. On the art, like those those for me were sort of like foundational as well. Of just like I was reading it in like the essentials, so in black and white and stuff, but just like totally getting hooked into it, and
Nice.
this sort of wish fulfillment that it delivered. I would say the Frank Miller Daredevil.
That's a great run.
Yeah, like I would also, let's see, some of the other ones. I think like I don't know if it for me like manga as like a world is something that you should read a complete run of something. And, like for me, the first thing was probably Akira, and
wow, yeah,
amazing. But like Pluto by Urasawa is like maybe like a good place to start.
Yeah.
I think.
You said Pluto?
Don't like Pluto. It's
okay.
like it's a retelling of an Astro Boy story.
Okay.
Sweet.
By Naoki Urasawa, who did 20th Century Boys and Monster. I think in terms of manga, it's a good place because it's like only 7 volumes or 8 volumes,
Sure.
and they're like this thick, as opposed to like
50.
One Piece.
Yeah.
One Piece, Naruto, 770,000 volumes. Yeah.
yeah. Like, let's see, other stuff. Let's see.
To everyone at home,
Get my shelf.
These are essentials according to Jesse, and if you don't read them, you're
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
You're cuck.
Just looking. Maybe a Hellboy. Hellboy would be pretty good. Jack Kirby's
nice.
Fourth World. Personally, I guess I would say OMAC.
Nice.
Like my Jack Kirby thing. Maybe his Black Panther, but I feel like you should come to that later.
You mentioned Mobius.
Yeah.
What about like Silver Surfer Parable or any of that?
For
The
Mobius,
Inkall?
I think I would start with Arzak, which is a shorter one, and it's also wordless. The Inkall is okay. I find like I find it, you guys probably deal with this too. Like if you're going to recommend like a comic book to somebody, like something like the Inkall is like it's a tome. It's like heavy, and it's really weird. It's a little hard to follow. Yeah.
Work your way up to it.
Yeah. And like I feel like with some stuff you need to be sort of ready, like you need a little bit of a primer before you can jump in to some stuff. And so yeah, those would be a good group.
That's cool.
That's a really solid answer. I feel like you should teach a university class that I should attend on comics.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be weird. I find it like comics. I feel are getting like more and more accepted, as like as an art form, and I feel they are moving more and more academic. But like for me, I'm sort of like, yeah, I don't know that I understand how it's academic. Like going to school for it still sounds a little strange to me, because for me it was just like I started drawing in high school, and then I snuck into the school and made photocopies, and those were my comics.
Yeah.
So.
That's pretty cool. So you come off as pretty open-minded, experimental. So when you're trying out a new medium or genre, like what's your creative process like?
Oh, it's a mess.
I don't know. I'm all over the place now.
I actually, like a few months ago, I was very like frustrated with myself, because like it's sort of like I think of an idea, and then I think of like how can this idea be presented, like how could I organize this idea, and I was just like, why don't you just do it the way you've done other stuff? And I'm like, but it's a different idea, and so it needs a different form. And so like, maybe I should draw this entirely with a brush, or something like that, or maybe I should draw it left-handed, because that would give it like a sort of clumsy feel that might like reflect sort of the clumsy nature of the characters, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I get really annoyed with myself for being like that, because it's like, why don't you just draw it the way you draw? And it's like, so
That'd be too easy.
yeah, that'd be too easy. So I find like sort of like in terms of like developing ideas, it starts in like a sketchbook, and sort of like it just starts with me drawing and like certain ideas are coming to the fore and sort of like they start building and sticking to each other, and then it starts getting put into like a comic book form, which is kind of messy. I'm not for myself. I don't really write scripts. I sort of just work off of like, layouts and stuff like that. That's also probably because I don't value words as much as other people. So
Fighting words.
yeah, I know, but like for me, and maybe I'd like to actually hear your answers. Like when I pick up a comic book in a store, I pick it up and I open it, I look at the art for a little bit, and if I don't like the art, I put it down.
Bingo.
Right. Yeah.
Bingo.
That's the same. I think that's for everybody. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So to me, that means like art is doing the driving.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the sell is definitely in the art, because you're not going to know if you like the writing until you sit down and read it. So
Right.
yeah,
The thing is that the art, the thing that's unique, and what you really touch on in your book, really exemplified, is that the art is writing in a comic. So it's not just if the art is good. I've opened a comic and seen good art that just didn't tell the story. So there's a whole layer to the art, that it's not just visually stunning, but one panel flows into the next panel, into the next panel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
yeah. So I mean, they are integrated, and like if I look at something and I'm like, this doesn't seem to be flowing, or I can't make sense of this page, like quickly. But sort of for me, and like this is also because I'm like the writer and artist. It's kind of something that always goes together. But for me, like I feel like the art is the driving force. But like when I've worked with writers on stuff, I find it very like freeing, because if I work with a writer, they have different ideas than I'll have, and also like I feel like, I don't know if it's like I feel like more responsible, like I need to push the art more because someone else is doing the writing. But it's also nice just to have like the plot taken care of, and it's just my job on this page is to make it work,
Right on. So so I don't know what you can tell us and what you can't, but what can you tell us about Planet Paradise?
So Planet Paradise, it's a graphic novel. It's like 124 pages or so. And it's about this sort of like vacation that goes wrong, like a space vacation that goes wrong, and they end up crash landing on a spacecation. That goes wrong, and they end up crash landing on a hostile alien planet and have to survive.
Cool.
And it's like with Hedra, like I'd done my own version, and I'd sort of seen how people reacted to it, and so when Image came out with the version, I had an idea of how people would respond. Maybe like I didn't know how many people would respond, but I had an idea. But with Planet Paradise, I'm a little more unsure, because it's a little more normal aesthetically. Like it's not 35 panels on a page; it's like 8 panels on a page. It's much sort of smaller. The story is sort of like smaller and much more character driven, which I don't know, that it's a little harder for people to react to, like smaller character driven things about like interpersonal conflicts. It's like, wow, I want to buy that.
I think a lot of people are going to pick it up just based on the reaction to Hedra. So
and then they'll be like, this isn't Hedra. I wanted Hedra too. And I'm getting like this weird thing about feelings.
You haven't made it. You haven't made it in this business until you get assaulted by the masses on Twitter. So
okay, no. I hope that never.
I would just give up on that hope right now. Just go ahead and just do that. It's not.
I mean, Twitter is such like a frustrating thing because on the one hand it's so powerful, you know, like I don't know if you guys were on Tumblr, but Tumblr, it was like you posted something and then the right person reposted it, and like all of a sudden it's like everybody's seeing this thing, and the same thing happens with Twitter.
Sure.
But then also it's sort of like with topics, there's so much anger, and I feel like it just like it's all social media, but like the dynamics of it really encourage like black and white, like because if you're kind of neutral about something, you're probably not going to do anything. You're not going to comment or anything. So it's only the people who are furious, and the only people who are furious in a different way. Just you? Are you regularly getting fights on Twitter?
What?
Yes.
What? Me? but it's like you said, there are plenty of things that you just scroll past, like I don't care, and then and when you see something you do care about, I think the healthy thing to do is to go, wow, I really disagree with that, and then continue to keep scrolling.
More people should comment.
Do that.
I'm indifferent. I'm indifferent.
I'm indifferent.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
Like I want the like not gonna respond button.
Yeah.
I want you to know I'm ignoring this.
Yeah. I have no
whatever
opinion.
Works for you.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Jesse Lonergan. Jesse, thank you so much for coming out. We will have links to where you can pick up Hedra, if not preferably at your local comic book store. Go get it. But if you can't, we'll put in some links to where you can find it online. We'll also go ahead and put in a link to his Patreon, where you can find some of his other work. It'll be right under our Patreon, so click ours first, then his. Thank you again for coming on. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks so much. Thanks. It was fun.
Subscribe, ring the bell, and be free. Follow our links and watch our show because you want to and not because of the threats. Thank you for watching Judah, Robo, and Ree. We talk about comics, movies, and TV. Sometimes we have notable guests, and sometimes it's just us. But we're also cool.